Hi Intermediate, we're going to do 12.2, which is a circle. So this is standard form of a circle. When the equation is in this form, I can tell what the center of the circle is. It's HK. So notice this has to be negative for me to say H, and this has to be negative for me to say K. They're both what we would call insides, so the center is always opposite of the sign. I'm going to say that again in a moment to make sure you register that. And the radius is R. Okay, so you got to be careful because what this equation equals is R squared. So you actually have to take the square root of it. Let me just give you a for instance so to make sure we're on the same page. Alright, so if I make up this example here, I'm going to say that the center of the circle is -3, 7, because it has to be opposite. These are both insides. And the radius of this is going to be 5, because the 25 is what R squared is. So I actually have to take the square root to get R. Alright, so let's go through two problems that would be like what I'm going to ask you on the final. So I'm going to ask you on the final to put the circle in standard form. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to write the circle in standard form. I'm going to ask you to identify the center and the radius. And I'm going to ask you to graph the circle. All right, so just like this. And I'll do two examples. This is totally test level, the questions that I'm doing. All right, so here we go. So it's a bit of a lengthy process, so maybe you might want to re-watch the video. It's up to you. But it's very doable. You just got to see it enough times. So the first thing you want to do is put the x terms together and put the y terms together and move the constant to the other side. Okay? So I'm going to put the x terms together. I'm going to leave a space. I'm going to put the y terms together. I'm going to leave a space. And I'm going to move the constant to the other side. Okay, now putting circles in standard form means that you have to do something called completing the square, which I actually showed you once, real brief, but this time you actually have to do it. So the formula for completing the square is 1/2 b quantity squared, where b is actually you could just say it's equal. B is actually in front of the linear term, okay? In front of the linear term. So for the first case here, I have two linear terms. So the first one, for x, b is equal to 6. So I'm going to put that in the formula. I'm going to do 1/2 of 6 and I'm going to square it. That makes this a 9. 1/2 of 6 squared makes that a 9. Now this is where it gets a little tricky, because if you add 9 to the left, you also have to add 9 to the right, because it has to stay balanced. You're on both sides of the equation. Okay, so this is usually what the student will forget to do, is add 9 to both sides. You've got to keep the scales balanced. Are you going to do the same thing for y? You're going to use the formula to complete the square. So you're going to do 1/2 times 2 squared, or 1 squared, which is 1. So you're going to put a 1 here. But again, you have to remember, you have to also add it to the right side. So you're going to add 1 to the right side as well. Now on the left side, I'm going to factor the x's, and I'm going to factor the y's. Okay, if I factor the x's, I get x plus 3 quantity squared. Don't write it like neighbors. Don't write x plus 3 times x plus 3 like this, because we want it to be 2 photocopies of something. That's what the form looks like. Okay, so don't write it like neighbors. Write it like that. All right, and then the other one is going to be y plus 1 quantity squared. Again, don't write this like neighbors. It won't look like the form if you write it like neighbors. All right, and then on the right side, just make sure you simplify this little bit over here. So negative 6 plus 9 plus 1 is 4. Now hopefully from that last example you remember how to do this now. So the center is opposite of the inside. So it's negative 3, negative 1, and this is the radius squared. So if r squared equals to 4, then r itself has to be 2. Okay? Now this is how I want you to draw it for the final exam. Okay? This is how you're going to do it. You're going to put the center up first. Okay, there's my negative 3, negative 1. And I want you to use the radius like spokes in a wheel. Okay, so if the radius is 2 from the center, I want you to go up 2 units. Okay, if I go up 2 units, I'm going to be at negative 3, positive 1. I want you to go down 2 units. If I go down 2 units, I'm at negative 3, negative 3. I want you to go right 2 units. Oh, sorry, from the center. Right 2 units from the center. If I do that, this point is at negative 1, negative 1. And I want you to go left 2 units. If I do that, I'm going to be at negative 5, negative 1. So I want you to draw like spokes in a wheel. Oh, my spacing's a little off. But let's move this guy down. Okay, that's a little better. I want you to do like spokes in a wheel, and then using the spokes in the wheel, I want you to draw the circle from that. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not going to take like a protractor out or anything. I just want to see that you have the gist of how to draw it. Okay, let me end the video here, and then I'll just do the process again, but this is exactly what you're going to do on the final, okay? I'll do another one so you can see it again. All right, catch you in another video. Bye-bye.